Well, we have learned overnight that Tesla has been under SEC scrutiny long before Elon Musk's tweet about going private last week. The Wall Street Journal reporting securities regulators began investigating last year whether Tesla misled investors about its Model 3 production problems. This latest revelation increasing the pressure on the company. Let's bring in attorney David Bruno. David, good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl.
How hard is all of this to prove that I'm assuming that they're looking at whether or not he knowingly misled investors with that tweet last week. And then we're also finding out that they've been investigating him for possible false statements, misleading statements about the production capabilities at the car company. How difficult is that from a legal perspective to get him on that?
Yeah, very difficult. I mean, there are various different possible litigations. There's a possible civil litigation by people that lost. There's a SEC civil investigation. That's what we're talking about here. And then there's the criminal investigation that possibly could flow. But let's talk about the civil. Yes, it's difficult. They would have to prove that he intentionally misrepresented. Now, we know from the Wall Street Journal article there are two different areas. The 2017 production statements about this bottlenecking that he explained as to why the production numbers fell below expectations, and then this tweet. We've learned a lot about this tweet. I mean, there's meetings with Saudi Arabian banks. There's also there are 7 independent board members that have come out and said, we've had board meetings about going private.
Well, but let me ask you something. You mentioned the meetings with the Saudis. You know, I mean, would that be enough to satisfy regulators and you know, that he could say, well, I had these meetings and we talked about taking the company private, so I was not misleading anybody. Can he use that as a defense?
Possibly. Lauren and I talked about this last week, but the language was very specific in the tweet, financing secured.
Gotcha.
Right? And what's recently come out is the financing wasn't actually secured. Yes, there were discussions, but there still had to be many different things to happen before that funding was actually approved.
Well, I want to get into other legal troubles that he may be facing as well, you know, shareholder lawsuits, etc. Listen to what Charlie Gasparino, our senior business correspondent here, said yesterday about the litigation issue.
One of their main worries, in addition to the SEC, is the private litigation, and they're starting to think about how much potential liability exists in the private litigation if investors sued because claiming that they lost money based on Musk's tweet. If he has to admit some level of wrongdoing, that will ramp up the litigation even more.
Not just that, but also, you know, was he specifically trying to hurt short sellers on the stock, which he has publicly complained about?
Sure. Always a concern for a company is litigation. It's not just what they would have to pay for losses to the shareholders. It's also the expense. There was a recent suit filed this week. They're trying to get a class action suit. Yeah, so it's going to be actually expensive. However, I don't see Musk actually admitting to defrauding. I could see sanctions. I could see a fine. I could see an investigation. But for him to say, it was my purpose to defraud, I don't see it happening. Therefore, I don't think it could be used in the civil action.
Well, there's also, you've got the board members lawyering up. You've got him now Musk is talking in the New York Times. Those words could, I guess, potentially be used against him in court. David, this story is, I'm sure, going to continue. Thanks for being here this morning. We appreciate it.
Have a great Friday.
Yeah, you too.